From Southwestern and Central Ontario's #1 news team, this is CKCO-TV News.
Good evening, I'm Lisa LaFlamme. This community and this television station are mourning the death of a great woman. Betty Thompson lost her valiant battle with cancer yesterday. To the end, she devoted her energies into making this a better place to be. CKCO's Ron Johnston looks back on her career and her life.
A native of Walkerton, Betty graduated in radio and TV from Ryerson in 1956 and joined CKCO-TV as a writer. She left for a few years to teach and then in 1972 returned to CKCO to host Romper Room for the CTV network. As well as Romper Room, Betty hosted a number of programs on CKCO-TV over the years. Flower Spot, Tempo, Ontario, Morning Magazine, while the formats differed, Betty's enthusiasm and interest in the people she was interviewing never changed.
As you might guess, we're at the dress rehearsal of the grandstand performance for the Daiene. And if we can hear ourselves above the din, we'll ask Bob a few questions. How does it feel to be home, Bob?
Well, it's bringing over here. You'll never hear me either.
For Betty, the line between broadcasting and community service was always blurred. She hosted the Oktoberfest parade with Harvey Kirk on the CTV network, and at the same time, she was the first woman on the Oktoberfest board of directors. Betty first got involved with volunteer work through Big Sisters. She'd been helped by others when she was a single mother raising 3 girls, and she wanted to give something back to society. She spent thousands of hours of both her business and personal time helping out many other groups, from the United Way to the KW Art Gallery. Family was very important to Betty, too. Her husband, Ken Bauman, was an anchor in her very busy life. Her mother, Gladys, and her daughters, Susan of Kitchener, Pat of Ottawa, and Judy of Vancouver, each brought their own source of joy. As vigorously as she worked on business and community projects, Betty battled her greatest opponent, cancer. When she was diagnosed, Betty went public through a series of public service announcements and a television special urging women to have regular checkups. She used her pain to help others.
I guess I'm really better with my thoughts first thing in the morning when I get up and it's a bright, bright day, and I just look up and I say, thanks God, you've given me another wonderful day. And I haven't any control over yesterday because it's over. And tomorrow isn't here, so I can't get my hooks into that day. But I've got today, and it's going to be great.
Our community and our lives are a lot richer because Betty Thompson lived. We're a lot poorer now that she's gone.
Betty was one of the most enthusiastic, optimistic people you could meet. She battled cancer for more than 3 years. Still, many find her death difficult to accept. Longtime friend Susan Kachic was with her just before she died.
Even in the last week, she still had that vibrancy and spunk and desire to live, and it was so sad to have her not be able to fight that damn cancer. And even again, that in itself speaks to, she was suffering of cancer, but again took the opportunity to suggest to other women to get breast cancer tests and breast exams and go out and try to fight. So she, again, no matter what she did, she always reached out towards others.
I suppose in her passing she's going to leave a legacy that a lot of people are going to appreciate in the future. She touched a lot of people's lives. They're going to be richer for it. And it may sound cliche, but the thing that I remember about Betty is once she locked in on something, she was very tenacious, like a bulldog, and she would hang on until the very end.
Funeral arrangements for Betty will be announced tomorrow, but in a special program following this newscast, we'll welcome to the studio many of her friends as we remember Betty.
guess I'm really better with my thoughts first thing in the morning when I get up and it's a bright, bright day, and I just look up and I say, thanks God, you've given me another wonderful day. And I haven't any control over yesterday because it's over. And tomorrow isn't here, so I can't get my hooks into that day. I've got today, and it's going to be great.
She looked forward to every day, even when she knew she didn't have many left. That's the kind of woman Betty Thompson was. Good evening, I'm LaFlamme. It's a sad day here at CKCO-TV because we've lost a dear friend. Betty Thompson died yesterday after a lengthy and valiant battle with cancer. The disease beat her physically, but it didn't defeat her spirit. And it's that spirit we celebrate tonight. For the next half an hour, we'll be remembering Betty, not just her familiar face here on CKCO, but also her tireless efforts in the community. Joining us in the studio are Susan Kachic, a longtime friend of Betty's, and Daiene, Vernile, a friend and colleague of Betty's.
Hi, Lisa.
Susan, you were with her yesterday.
Yes, it was hard to see, as you say, a vibrant woman like that battling cancer, and it was hard to see her finally having to say, this is the end, or this is it. But believe me, her spirit does live on in many of us in the events and opportunities that we've had working with her. So
that's for sure. And I know, Daiene, you'll probably agree with me. Here at CKCO, it's going to be hard for us to really believe this because she's always in our minds for so many of us. She was sort of a mentor for certainly women broadcasters.
She was. I think that you touched on this before, Susan. Those of us who knew her professionally and people who know her socially, you can't believe that this has happened. I mean, we knew that she was ill for several years and she suffered a great deal. And yet, with the news that came yesterday, it's no less shocking. I feel the loss not just a personal friend, but as a mentor. She did something that was very unique and original. She was a woman, a pioneer in broadcasting, working in the 60s and the 70s when many didn't. And for those of us who broke into the business, she was there like a beacon lighting the way for us. Of course, you look around now in broadcasting, there are just as many men as there are women. And we could always turn to Betty for advice, for questions, for problems, and she was always there for us. A lot of women, not just in broadcasting, but in other businesses too.
I was going to say, she was so involved in the community she lived in. There are so many, organizations that Betty either spearheaded or certainly participated in. And Best Friends organization is one of them, Susan.
it is indeed, and it happened actually through the disbandment of the Oktoberfest Women's Committee. And if I can say something about Betty, she was an opportunist to help the community. She saw a way of raising funds, even if it was her own 50th birthday party that we put on for her. She took that opportunity to raise money, not for herself, but to better the community. And again, with Best Friends, which is an arm of Big Sisters fundraising, these ladies that when Oktoberfest Women's Committee disbanded, she thought, Susan, there's all these wonderful women out there that have worked and they're going to be at loose ends. What can we do to get them together and create an event or use them?
I think that
for
we all lost
Best Friends.
We lost track of the number of groups, committees,
I was going to
and
say, what about Big
organizations.
Sisters and Housing for Kids? This is
Absolutely.
another major project. Daiene, you were also involved with her in that program.
It was amazing. For a period of about 3 or 4 years, Betty and I had the opportunity to sit right facing each other in a part of the TV station, and you would just sit there and see her percolating with ideas.
That's a great way to put it.
The Best Friends group was one of those ideas. How can we raise money for Big Sisters? And she essentially started the Big Sisters organization in this community. And she didn't stop for a moment. She was constantly thinking about ideas of raising money for different organizations.
And I guess the thing that will live on for this community is the Housing for Kids, which is still sort of a project in the growing stages.
It's a project, a home for homeless teens. It's actually been developed now into a resource center for teenagers who have problems can go to this. It's been named in her honor, and I think aptly so.
That's for sure. Well, it's been 3 years. Actually, it was 3.5 years ago that Betty was first diagnosed with breast cancer. Like everything else in her life, she met the challenge head on. The cancer was not something she hid from. She went public with her battle and was the focus of an award-winning CKCO News special. Betty became a spokesperson for the Cancer Society and through her battle became an inspiration to others.
To this day, I have to think that maybe some of my ridiculous dieting contributed to the disease I got. I have no way of knowing, I think that way. I don't feel sick, and I don't feel ill, and I don't feel unwell, and when people say, talk to me about my illness and say, oh, I'm sorry to hear about your illness, I have such trouble identifying with that. And I was never sick. I had this happen to me, but I was never sick. So it's when they say it's a silent killer, it sure is.
I have this friend. She's fighting breast cancer. She's one of those exciting women. Powerful, you know. When things are wrong, she changes them. Her town has benefited from her encouragement. The whole province has felt her contribution. But there's a 33 1/3% chance that she will die from this disease. Oh, please don't let that happen. This whole country needs her. And all the other women struggling to overcome breast cancer. Call the Breast Cancer Society of Canada now.
I think for all of us, when Betty did go so publicly with this disease, it really made us all strong, I think, for her when she fought this.
This is one of the great qualities that she had, and I won't forget her for this, where she could take a personal crisis, and she did suffer a great deal with her cancer, and yet rather than being self-indulgent and self-focused, she took the situation and she went public with it, and she thought, how can I help people? And she was determined to get any woman out there who thought about cancer to go out and get a mammogram.
That's for sure. And a good example is she was a charter member of the Zonda Club, which I am a member of also, and we're having a golf classic in raising funds again to support her pet project and helping fight cancer.
And that was for cancer.
That was for cancer too.
There's one thing that comes to mind for me, and I want to share this with you. This is maybe a very selfish thing, but last week I wanted to visit Betty. I just had a baby 2 months ago, and I just got busy, and it was a very busy week, and it was on a list of things to do, and I didn't do it. And I'm very sorry that I didn't. But if you know someone out there who is ill or has a disease or a problem, and you want to get in touch with them, do it. Don't wait. Do it right away.
That's right. And I think that Betty also would support that sort of thing, you know, telling people, get out there, do something. Don't just think about it. And she acted on so many things in her life. Are there other organizations or things you can sort of remember about Betty? I mean, you spent so many years with her as
doing her hair for
forever,
over 20 years, a lot of ideas were pulled out of her head, that's for sure. And I'm glad I went to see her yesterday, even though she didn't know I was there. But on Tuesday when I saw her, she looked at me and she said, Susan, I've got to get walking so I can be at your party, which is my 25th anniversary. So even then, when she was not well, she still had that spirit. And I'd like to read something of a creed that she gave to best friends, and a portion of it that I think exemplifies her, and that is, commitment is the stuff that character is made of, the power to change the face of things. It is the daily triumph of integrity over skepticism, and that was her. She was able to create and do things for the community and for her friends.
So
I think anyone that has met her,
all of us.
anybody that has met her has been enriched with her life.
And I thank you both.
Their enthusiasm.
We
miss you, Betty.
We do.
We do.
Many
She's organizing things up in heaven
Yeah,
now,
I think
I'm
so.
sure.
Many of you grew up watching Betty Thompson on CTV's Romper Room. I know I did. She broke into television in 1956 when she was hired as a copywriter here at CKCO. Betty left the station to raise her family, then became a teacher. It was that marriage of teaching and TV that made Betty the perfect hostess for CTV's Romper Room, which she appeared on from 1972 to 1975. For 20 years, she created and starred in many CKCO shows, programs like Ladies First, Betty and Friends, Tempo Ontario, and Morning Magazine. Then there were the Oktoberfest and Santa Claus parades over the years. These public appearances make memories for all of us.
And Happy Jack Dad says it's time for romper room school, and I want you to do what I do. Will you do what I do to fly like an airplane? Come on, airplane. And sit up like a dog and beg.
That fairy tale picture of the farm family living happily ever after in rural Ontario is just that, a fairy tale.
You know, all of this, Randy, you know, it's really neat.
I'll bet it. She had a crazy side. Betty's career route touched a lot of our lives. Joining us now are three people all affected by her in a different way. Bill Inkol, Fran, Pappert, and Chuck Greb. And Bill, I want to talk to you first because I think you were on TV a long time ago with Betty when she started. If you want to talk about some
Way
of those
back.
early days.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I didn't
Black
want
and white. Go ahead, say it. I was there with Dalt, with Pat Ludwig at
That's
that time.
right.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about Betty way back then.
You know, she had, first of all, she had the tenacity to stick to anything. And she used to come into my office or stop me in the hall and say, "What do you think of this? And I need a favor from you." So you say, that's fine. and you'd talk to her for a couple minutes. 10 minutes later, she'd be back again. She'd say, "I thought of something else." And then after a while, you were saying, "Okay, Betty, what do you need? We'll give you all you need," and then leave it at that. But she was that kind of a person. I worked with her. We did the opening to the Uniroyal Junior Curling Championship. And after it was over, we were stuck 2 days. We were running through the opening ceremony. And after it was over, I said, "Betty, I'll never work another show like this as long as I live." Because she had that ability to drive you to the edge and then maybe pull you back, and after a while you'd forget about it. But she had that quality.
Yeah, and she always got the job done, and it was
yes.
done to perfection.
But that's what she did. There were times, but I'll tell you one thing. When she locked onto something, like that was it. She was like a bulldog and a pork chop. She just stuck to it and carried the thing right through. That was one of the qualities that she had. And she liked this business. She had a real passionate love affair with television.
And as we said earlier in the show, she was a real inspiration to a lot of us here. And I know, Fran, she was an inspiration for you also.
Yes, she was.
Tell us a little bit about that relationship you guys had, which was very special.
I'm really proud to say she was my friend, but she was my mentor. And when I was a little child, I would watch her as Miss Betty. And people said to me, you know, how are you going to replace Miss Betty? And I didn't replace Miss Betty. I simply followed her. She was romper room. She was the station. You know, here we are sitting in her studio.
That's right.
And we've all done other shows here, but this was her studio, and she infused it with her spirit and energy and generosity and talent. You know, she was a really talented woman, good interviewer. And when I was a child, I used to look at her. You know, she did fashion shows with Pat. It's great to see Pat again. And you know, he'd be playing away and she'd be commentating, and I would think she was the most glamorous, together kind of woman. I wanted to be like her. And when I started at the station, she was the first one to say hello, the first one to welcome me. And as I know she's done with you and Daiene and so many women, she shared, and men, she shared her knowledge and expertise. She was genuine, generous. She was great.
That's for sure. I know for myself, she was always saying, with Morning Magazine, she always wanted me to get on there and do some live interviews and get the experience, she'd say. Now, in her community service, which she talked a lot about in the programs that she was in, but Chuck, you worked with her directly, and she broke a lot of ground for Oktoberfest in this community.
She broke a lot of ground for the community. You know, as Bill said, when you were talking about the junior curling, I couldn't help but remember the Ontario Summer Games when you and I both worked with her and suffered under the fact that she was going to make the ladies' part of the Ontario Summer Games a major event, and she did it.
I forgot that. Yeah, we were all traumatized at that time,
But
she was very devoted to that.
Particularly with Oktoberfest. And you have to go back to, you know, the early 70s, late 60s, when Oktoberfest was a kind of a male-dominated festival, and Betty was the soul lady that was involved on an active part, the sole female member of the board of directors. She did a fabulous job.
And her goal was sort of to what? To soften the image a little bit.
Her goal was to soften the image and to bring in the families and to, the parade was her big joy, of course, and she wanted to develop the parade. And her ambition, as she got into Flowers Canada and so on, was to make the parade a duplicate of the Rose Bowl parade. And of course that led to Raymond Burr and all of those things. But my memories basically of Betty are as you've all described. I mean, she's a mentor. She's somebody that just, there's nothing that's impossible, and it's going to happen.
That's right.
But my real memory, and Susan, her daughter, brought it to my attention a few weeks ago at the Citizen of the Year banquet. She said that they had been out for a drive, just the Sunday before that, had driven past our home in the country and remembered Thanksgiving Day at our house. And what happened for many years during the Oktoberfest parade, after all the work was done and after the parade was down the street, the Thompson family and the Greb family gathered for Thanksgiving dinner. And that was a tradition. And that's my memory today.
And I think all of us are going to have a lot of memories like that one where, you know, when the day rolls around, when next Oktoberfest rolls around, there's certainly going to be someone missing.
Yeah.
But we'll have those memories to, you know.
It should be part of all of us.
That's right.
And all of this community, too.
Well, Betty spent most of her mornings actually in this studio with thousands of guests over the years. And two of her sidekicks are here tonight. If we'll go over here, I've got a microphone on. Is it going to move with me?
We'll make it move.
We'll make it move. The magic of television. Pat Ludwig is here, who played with Betty for, I've still got a problem here. Maybe we can just let Pat play for a little bit till I organize my microphone problem.
Beautiful.
Two of our sidekicks here in the studio, Pat Ludwig, who played piano on the show for many years, and Jack Alexander, one of the camera cronies here at CKCO.
Camera one.
Camera one. You have a lot of memories of Betty from way
I do, and there's another fellow that used to be on camera two, Ronnie Beatty, and the three of us used to always pick on Betty.
And I bet she could take it and give it right back.
Well, she always used to say on Monday morning, Jack, put that thin lens on. and we'd always say, well, Betty, it is on. And she'd say, no, it isn't. Get the thin lens.
Yeah, she told me when I started too that the camera does add 30 pounds.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah. And then there were other times that when the food came in, she was always complaining about being with the, what diet was she on? She had 3 or 4 that she was always on a diet. Weight Watchers. And she kept saying, I can't eat that because I'm on Weight Watchers. So Ronnie and I would say, well, don't worry about it. We'll look after it. And we'd always dig into it and start having a good, our lunch actually was paid by whatever she had on the show.
Now,
And,
Pat, you were a sidekick, really, for a lot of those programs. Would you call yourself that?
I think so. We worked together very closely, really. Shared an office together and everything, and I helped a lot help her with her show as much as I could too, formats and all these different things and so on. And
you got yourselves into a couple of interesting situations, I'm sure.
Well, yeah, Betty had that knack of getting me into situations, I'll tell you. Bill and I were talking a little bit earlier. There was a parade going. I forget which parade it was. What was it, Bill? It was in the fall anyway. It was cold out.
It was a Labor Day parade. Was
it?
Yeah.
Okay. So Betty got me going to help her do some interviews out at the front here. And I never went to interview college or anything like that. So
she would have been a great trainer.
Oh, no. So we're out there, and I got to talk to somebody. So I spotted a cousin of mine, And adrenaline was going and everything, so I went up to him and I says, how'd you like the parade? And he says, oh, it's fine, it's fine. But the thing is that the parade wasn't even there yet.
You fudged that one a little bit.
Yeah.
What about music? I mean, music was so much a part of the show and Betty's life. Was there any songs in particular that she always said, Pat, play that one?
Yeah, she loved Satin Dolls, Duke Ellington numbers. She liked a lot of music, yeah.
Why don't you play us a little bit of that?
All right.
Pleasure of meeting Betty Thompson has their own warm memories of a truly remarkable woman. It might be from a community project or fundraising event, having some fun during Romper Room, or just sharing a cup of coffee with Betty and her guests on TV some morning. Betty Thompson was a good friend to all of us, and she'll be greatly missed. We leave you tonight with a song that pretty much sums up our feelings around here today. It's called Memories of You.